coming. If anyone needs coffee, there's coffee on the pot. There's also, just coffee in the pot. We're basically just going to be going over fundamentals of nutrition. This is stuff that they should be covered in high school and unfortunately don't. So a lot of us do not have a grasp on what we should be doing with our nutrition when we go into a diet mode or even a goal setting mode. Just trying to eat healthier, whether that's to change our body composition, lose weight, or even gain weight if you're looking to gain muscle. We don't know how to adjust for that because we just don't have that foundation there. So that's basically what we're trying to cover today. It's just the foundations of nutrition and then some dieting strategies, and then I'll have some time at the end for Q&A if you guys have questions. I'm sure there was a lot of questions. The main things that I noticed in the Google form that you guys filled out with the feedback that you were looking for today was, one, that most people had tried a diet before and it wasn't sustainable, mostly because all we know is calorie restriction and we don't know how to diet. And the other thing was like not knowing how to track food properly. So even if you think that you're in a calorie restriction mode, maybe you're not because you don't know actually what you're consuming. So we'll cover that as well. So to go over the first and most basic part of this, calories. Calories are basically just a unit of energy. So calories, anything from a protein to a carbohydrate and a fat. This is what we use to carry out day-to-day tasks. So if you kind of look at calories like money, it's money in, money out. So calories in is what we have as our energy source, and we have to output that to burn through that calorie source. And when we don't, that's where fat accumulation happens. Your calorie needs come from 3 different things, and I will go over these in more detail, but your basal metabolic rate, so that's basically just the calories that you burn at rest. It's just to survive. That's like if you were laying in bed all day, those are the calories that your body uses just to function. Total daily energy expenditure, so that's your exercise, daily movement, digestion, all of those things. And like I said, I'll break those down a little bit more later on in the slideshow. There's ways to estimate what your caloric need is. That really it's dependent on the person because a lot of things can change that, like the types of foods that you're eating, little movements. If you're like a fidgeter, your caloric needs might be a little bit higher. But to get a general estimate, you would use the Harris-Benedict equation. There's all kinds of online calculators. Most of them are inaccurate. This still isn't going to be exact, but it'll give you a ballpark of what your caloric needs are, and then you can adjust from there, and I'll talk about how to do that. Next slide. So macros. So from calories, like I said, you have protein, carbs, and fats. Those are your 3 macros. So we need all of these things. They're called macronutrients because they're things that we need in larger quantities. Protein is 4 calories per gram. Carbs are 4 calories per gram. Fats are 9 calories per gram. So you get more than twice as many calories from your fats as you do protein and carbs. Protein's good for things like building muscle, maintaining muscle tissue, skin elasticity, structural integrity, immune function, pH balance, hormones, all of those good things. So a lot of people see protein as just a muscle building macro, but it does a lot more than that. It's super essential for so many functions in your body. Carbohydrates, so this is like the most readily available energy source. So if you're somebody who works out a lot, carbohydrates are a little bit more important. Your body's going to burn through carbs before it burns through fat. The stored version of carbohydrates is glycogen. So somebody who does do a lot of intense workout are going to burn through their glycogen storage before they even tap into their fat storage. So that's why carbohydrates tend to be a little bit higher in most caloric restriction diets, because that's the first thing that your body's going to go through before it taps into that fat supply. So you definitely need carbohydrates just for daily function, but especially if you exercise. And they also help replenish muscle. So if you're somebody who gets pretty sore from working out, it could be a carbohydrate issue. And then fats, like I said, 9 calories per gram, so fats are really calorie dense. That's not to be scared of them, but just know that that's probably where most people are overdoing it when they go into a caloric surplus. That fats are really the thing that you could easily shave out of your diet and get more food volume and still get to feel satiated. but reducing their caloric intake. Fats are super essential for hormonal function, so you do still need a certain amount of fats in your day-to-day life. These super low-fat diets wreak havoc on your hormones. If you're somebody who has hormone issues going into a low-fat diet, it becomes an issue. So let's talk a little bit more about protein. So sources of protein. A lot of people just think chicken. Everyone assumes that Nick and I just eat chicken and rice as our diet. It's not just chicken. Lean meats is an easy source of protein. So chicken is one of them, but whitefish, shrimp, sirloin, ground meats, venison, things like that. Dairy products often, especially if you find a low-fat dairy product like fat-free milk, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese or low-fat cottage cheese. Fat-free cheeses are pretty much just protein. So those are all super protein dense. Egg whites are pretty much just protein. And then beans and legumes. So chickpeas, things like that. Sources of carbs. This is everyone's best friend. We all love our carbs. Obviously you can get them from different types of sources. Fruits, breads, starchy vegetables. Again, beans are like 50-50, carbs and protein, and then rice. Obviously there's more than that, but those are the main food sources. Sources of fats. I've got a couple of these bolded. I don't know if you guys can see that, but fats are the big one that I wanted to hit today because a lot of times fat sources get misconstrued as protein sources. So main sources of fats that you're going to have in your day-to-day diet: nuts, butter, avocado, oils, eggs, chia seeds, coconut, peanut butter, your non-fat meats like pork, chicken thigh, ribeye, prime rib, all of our favorite meats, and then when we fish like salmon, sardines, mackerel. So I really wanted to hone in on this because almost all of those are things that people would put in healthy food categories and eat a lot of, thinking that they're doing something good for their body. But if you're trying to, and I'm not saying that they're not healthy, they are healthy, they have all kinds of micronutrients. But if you're trying to restrict calories to lose body fat, this is typically where people are going wrong because they're consuming all of these extra calories from things that are very small in portion, not satiating, and very calorie dense. So eliminating things like oils from your diet, swapping egg whites from eggs, in moderation. You don't need to completely eliminate them, obviously. A lot of people do nuts and peanut butter thinking they're getting their protein in. They are not a protein source. Same thing for like chia seeds. A lot of people like will scoop chia seeds into their protein shakes or their fruit shakes, thinking that they're doing something healthy for it. And chia seeds are really good for your gut, but 2 tablespoons of chia seeds in your protein shake automatically adds over 200 calories to it, and you don't even notice it. So just little things to watch out for. Fiber. So this is not a macronutrient, but it is also super essential for people to watch, not just for weight loss goals, but it is so essential for your gut health. So with the calories in, calories out thing that I was talking about, it really does boil down to calories in, calories out. There's like this new push on social media saying the calories don't matter, it's food quality. To a degree, I agree with that, but it is at the end of the day, it's calories in, calories out. However, it's kind of like if you look at your body like the economy, the money in, money out might be the same dollar amount, but if you're in a trash economy, it's just not worth the same. Your body isn't going to utilize those calories as properly or as efficiently as if you had a really good digestive tract or economy to use them for. So making sure that your gut health is regulated, and that's something that is on your priority list if you are in a diet mode, or even if you're trying to improve your health in general. A lot of things stem from gut Vitamins, like I was saying with fat, you need fats to regulate hormones, you also need them to absorb certain vitamins. So your fat-soluble vitamins are vitamin A, D, E, and K, and then you have some water-soluble vitamins, like all of your B vitamins. So that's why hydration and getting enough fat in your diet is important. And then you have all of your minerals, which are also super duper important. Magnesium, potassium, zinc, things like that. And like I said, I'll send you guys some slideshows so you can go over the full list. I wanted to cover supplements today because that is also a hot topic. Supplementation does definitely have a place in today's food culture. I used to not be a huge supplement person. I thought that was you need to just address these things with your diet. But the more I dove into what's really going on with our food source, the more I realized we do need supplementation in our diet. So while I don't like to sit here and push supplements like a salesperson, we do need supplements in our diet because we are deficient in so many things. So I think I have protein powder first on the list. Protein powder, I put that one on there as one of my essential supplements. It's not really essential if you're somebody who eats plenty of meat and you get enough protein in your diet. You don't need to supplement protein. However, most of us really struggle to get enough protein in our diet, so it's just an easy way to get it in, and there's no benefit to eating whole foods over protein powder. If you need to get the protein in, it's a good way to get it in. Magnesium is my number 2. I think that everyone should be on magnesium supplements, and I used to not really push this one, but magnesium is super essential for 700-800 functions in your body, and we are all deficient in it. Unfortunately, because of farming practices, our soil is depleted from magnesium, so it is something that we used to get in society from our food. It's not something that we can get from our food anymore unless you strictly buy from renewable resources where farming practices are a little bit better. Multivitamins. This is a big one because, again, we're not getting enough of this stuff from our food. So I strongly urge everyone to take a good daily multivitamin in non-gummy form, so a pill or a tablet, or even powders. Gummies just don't absorb as well, and they usually add things like gluten and other things into the gummy to make it into that form and process it fat eats. By the time you actually get it into your gut, you're not really getting much out of it. So a good pill form multivitamin is, I think, essential for everybody. There's really no reason not to take one. Omega-3, I put that one on there because inflammation is a huge issue for most of us, whether that is just from working out or other inflammatory things from our environment or from our foods that are just really hard to avoid. Omega-3s are super essential for that. Also very good for cardiovascular and joint health, so that's something that everyone should be taking to stay on top of that so that we don't deteriorate. Creatine, this one is really misunderstood as some bodybuilding type supplement, but everyone needs creatine, whether you work out or not. I mean, you can be a completely sedentary person and benefit from creatine. It does help with muscle, if you're trying to put on muscle, if you are trying to look at a little bit of an edge in your training, but it's also very, very beneficial for cognitive function and brain health. So preventing Alzheimer's and dementia, just general neurological function, amongst many other things that creatine is good for. Everyone should take that as well. And then vitamin D, which is good for bone health, overall well-being. Everyone should have that if it's not in your daily multivitamin, specifically D3. Okay, so I wanted to go over how to read the nutrition label because not everyone knows how to do that, and unfortunately, it's the number 1 step that we need to take. And yes.
Do you want me to turn the lights off so people can actually see this label real quick?
Yeah, you can. Okay, so I'm gonna have a couple. Jen, do you need a flashlight for you?
I'm just over here with him for a minute.
I'm gonna go over a couple of food labels, so I want you guys to be able to see what I'm looking at on the label, and then we're gonna kind of do some math to understand what we're getting from that food product. So when you're looking at a nutrition label, the first thing that you're gonna do is check the calorie count and the serving size. So things like a bag of chips when you pour yourself out what you think is one serving, it's probably not. Or even those like snack size ones, sometimes those will say like 2 or 2.5 servings per thing, but you're thinking that you're walking around with a single serving of chips, and really you're getting 2 to 2.5, sometimes more. So it's always super important to check if you're carrying something that looks like it's single serving, make sure it's actually single serving. Look at the macronutrient breakdown of your carbs, fats, and protein. So this is, I think this was one of my barbell bars that I just threw up here. It shows that I have 8 grams of fat in this product, 19 grams of carbs. Of those 19 grams, 3 grams are dietary fiber. It's got 1 gram of sugar, no gram of added sugar. So that means there's some kind of natural sugar in it. You're not adding sugar to that, but it does contain sugars. And then 20 grams of protein. The sugar alcohol, that's like your sugar substitute. So that's why it's still adding up to 19 grams. When you're looking at the carbohydrate breakdown, the lines under that should add up to how many carbs are in that. So that's why a lot of times you'll see like those keto products or low carb products that will still say that has carbs in it. But let's say this one had 19 grams of carbs and 19 grams of dietary fiber. It probably tells you on the nutrition label that it has that many less calories. And then read the ingredient list. Really anything that has just a bunch of ingredients or things that you can't read or things that you want to avoid. If you can't pronounce it, those are things that you enjoy in small doses. Go ahead. Okay, I wanted to cover peanut butter because this one's a hot topic for me. If you guys didn't know that already. Just because it's such a common misconception that peanut butter is a protein source. So, this is a label off of a Jif peanut butter tub. Peanut butter serving size is 2 tablespoons or 33 grams. In that, you've got 16 grams of fat, 8 grams of carbs, a little bit added sugar, 7 grams of protein. So you can already see that it has more fat than protein, but if you actually do the math, what's 7 times 4? 28 calories of that is in protein. What's 16 times 9? Somebody get a calculator out. 7 or 10 math. It's 144. Okay, what did I just say? So 144 calories is in fat, and what was it, like 28 calories was protein?
Wow.
Significantly more calories are coming from fat than protein. So, if you were to look at this label and determine what is the main macronutrient that this is providing, what is it? It's fat. It's a fat source. That doesn't mean it doesn't have those other things in it, but if you're trying to identify, okay, this one's mostly a fat, a carb, or protein, that's how you're going to do it. I kind of wanted to go over comparing 2 different similar products, because I do think that a lot of times people try to make ingredient swaps thinking that they're going to go with the healthier option, and they're really just still feeling like they're missing out on the real deal, and that's why their diet isn't sustainable. So I'm not against having treats in your diet. If you want an Oreo, have an Oreo. However, if you're in a calorie restriction and you're trying to maximize your food volume and how you feel with that food, maybe the alternative is better. But I always urge people to look at the ingredient labels and pick some things in their diet that they don't want to swap out. Like the things that, if you're not going to be satisfied eating a Catalina Crunch cookie, eat the real Oreo, because really what it's going to break down, or what it's going to come down to is food quality. So I just wanted to compare these 2. 3 cookies of Oreos is 160 calories, 2 cookies is 90 calories of the other one, so what is that, like 130 for the same amount of cookies? So you're only talking about 30 calorie difference between those 2. Go ahead, go to the next slide. I'm going to show you the ingredient labels. So this is where maybe the ingredient labels can make a difference. If you are in a calorie restriction or a dieting phase, and you're just not feeling full enough on the food that your calorie allotment, things like the ingredients are good things to look for. Basically, Catalina Crunch just has a used ingredient to the least used ingredient. So the number one, the biggest volume of ingredient in Oreos is unbleached enriched flour. Don't let enriched flour fool you. A lot of times they fortify flour to add back ingredients because the process that it takes to bleach the flour removes all of the nutrients from it, and that's their attempt to add it back in. But in that process, they add a bunch of other chemicals and things that aren't really necessary and make the flour horrible for you. So I always push for organic flour when you're baking. Obviously, you can't avoid it in things that are prepackaged. The number one ingredient in Catalina Crunch cookies is palm fruit oil, and then it goes into allulose, which is sweetener, pea protein, cane sugar. So a lot of cleaner options. If you look through this one, you start getting into some things that you can't even really pronounce or you don't know what those are. So that's just something to watch out for if you're trying to clean things up, and especially if you're looking at your diet from a health standpoint. That's where those things come into play a lot. So we're going to go over what your macronutrient needs are. So we've already gone over what protein, carbs, and fats are, but how much do you need in your diet? That kind of depends on the person. But just as a general touch point, protein should be about 1 gram per pound of body weight. So if I weigh 130, I should ideally be getting around 130 grams of protein per day. The exception to that is if you are very overweight and you're trying to cut body weight. So let's say you have 50 pounds to lose. You're going to go off your goal weight in that case. You don't necessarily need that much protein in your diet. And the same thing if you're underweight, if you're somebody who has very little muscle, and I'm talking like sickly people, might need a little bit more protein in their diet to help build that muscle. Carbohydrates should be about 40 to 60%. This is dependent on the person and really dependent on your activity level. Somebody who does CrossFit 3 times a day is going to need a lot more carbs than somebody who's really sedentary. Carbs and fats at the end of the day don't really matter. So you get your overall caloric budget, you take the protein out of that. The carbs and fats, as far from a fat loss standpoint, don't matter as much. They do matter for things like your energy levels, hormone balance, things like that. So those are things to look at if you are struggling or having symptoms that you need to resolve through your diet. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter from a fat burning standpoint. Fat should be about 15 to 35% of overall caloric intake. This can be higher. There's people who definitely benefit from really high fat diets and low carb, especially people who are sensitive to carb or have really bad gut issues. So you definitely can get more fats, but what you have to understand is if your diet is high in fat, you're not getting a lot of volume out of that. You know, like I said with the peanut butter thing, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter is 200 calories. You can get 200 calories worth of a carb source, and it's going to be a lot more volume sitting on your plate than those 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. So it's just something to consider when you're setting calories. Okay, weight loss strategy. So I'm actually going to go over the 3 things that you do with your diet. So there's, from a caloric standpoint, there's 3 things that you want to do: either lose weight, body recomposition, or muscle growth. That's what everyone's going to go into a diet for. So weight loss, obviously, is number 1. Most of us have a little bit of body fat that we can lose. What you need to lose weight is a sustainable nutrition plan. With a weight loss goal, it's going to entail having a calorie deficit, so consuming less calories than what you burn in a day. Your calorie deficit is where most people go wrong. That's why most people had that response that I've tried a diet before and it wasn't sustainable, because maybe they burn 2,000 calories a day and they were trying to diet on 1,200 calories. You're only going to do that for so long before you get burned out and give up on it. So your calorie deficit should be about 5 to 10% less than what you burn in a day. So really moderate deficits, being patient with the process, but that's going to be something that's sustainable for most people. You're not going to deal with a whole lot of hunger doing that. You're going to be able to hang on to that much longer than somebody who tries an extreme calorie deficit, can only stick with it for 2 weeks and then gives up. Body recomposition is when your caloric intake and your caloric expenditure are about the same, but you're trying to do something physically different with your body. So maybe I weigh 130 pounds and I have a little bit of body fat on me, but I'm really trying to put on some muscle at the same time. So I'm training for that and I'm also eating for that. So my caloric intake probably is going to be pretty close to my maintenance, you're doing just like a calorie deficit, a very small caloric surplus while you're training for that goal is beneficial. So how do you put it all together? How do you make a diet? Build your meal around protein. That's the first thing that you should be considering every time you build a meal, most of the time for snacks. The main source of that meal should be protein. So you're gonna pick something that gives you 30 to 50 grams of protein per meal, depending on how many grams you eat for the day. For most people, that's gonna be like 4 to 6 ounces of meat. Then you're gonna pick a carb source, starting with around 150 grams of cooked carbs. So that can be rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, whatever your side is, bread, fruits. And then you're gonna pick a fat source. This is something that you wanna keep minimal. So sometimes this means cooking with oil, and that's the only fat source you have on your plate. Sometimes that means adding a little bit of avocado to your toast. That's your fat source in that one. But this should, for most people, be around 10 to 15 grams per meal. And I'm just giving these numbers based on like around a 2,000 calorie diet. So somebody who's much larger and has more weight to lose, their caloric expenditure is going to be higher because it takes their body more energy to do those day-to-day functions. So they may get a lot more and still be able to diet than somebody who's really small. If I was going to want to diet, I would only get, somewhere around 2,000, 2,400 calories. And then you're going to make sure you get some micronutrients. So this means getting your vegetables in. The bare minimum that everyone should be getting is 200 grams a day. So that's about a cup a day, but really like double that is really ideal. But as a nutrition coach, I understand that you shouldn't do that. Try to get that bare minimum in at least. Getting people to eat their veggies is really hard. And then from there, you're just gonna look at whole day. So like, let's say you went out to breakfast and you had like a really carb-dense breakfast, and your breakdown didn't happen like this. Like you ended up with way more than 150 grams for breakfast. So you're gonna take that away from meals later in the day. So your overall protein, carbs, and fats should still balance out for the most part at the end of the day. It's not an exact science. It's not something to stress about. At the end of the day, if you're getting your protein in and staying in your caloric range, you're staying on track. But no, you might need to adjust here and there. If you have a really high fat breakfast, you might need to go with something like a lean meat for dinner to help balance that out. Okay, we're gonna look at weighing food. This is a super important topic because most of you guys responded that I've only ever either used measuring cups or eyeball food portions. Very few people have ever actually weighed their food. And while weighing food can be really cumbersome and kind of overwhelming at first, it's not something you should have to do forever. It's to give you, one, if you have a specific goal in mind, to help you stay on track for that goal and understand what you're actually taking in, and two, to help you be able to eyeball those things and get a good idea of what your normal day should look like, so that when you aren't weighing your foods really shouldn't change. The portion shouldn't change too much. It'll fluctuate here and there, but it really shouldn't be a drastic difference if you're not weighing your food. So it gives you a really good understanding of how much you're actually consuming. So we're gonna look at a couple of examples of that. Can you guys see that? Just real quick. How many ounces of T-bone steak? We're taking out the bone. So how many ounces are you consuming there? 8. 8?
Yeah. Ten.
10 ounces?
10. Yeah.
Okay, that's 6 ounces of T-bone steak. So that's why eyeballing is not gonna work here. You guys are actually overshooting how much you're eating. So you think that you're eating more than, so if you're gonna go into MyFitnessPal and log 8, you log probably about, 800 or 900 calories worth of T-bone steak. You're only consuming 514 calories. Of that 514 calories, however, this is a really fat dense meat. So you've got 38 grams of carbs, 43 grams of protein. You have almost as much, not carbs, fat. You have almost as much fat as you do protein. So people are gonna look at that and be like, I got 43 grams of protein for that meal. And you'll see that on TikTok a lot. Like you'll look at recipes and it's like high protein meal, but it's also high fat, so it's still a fat meal. Like this is providing you more fat than it is protein. So you've got 514 Basically, you'll know if your proteins and fats are close to the same number. That's a fat source. It may give you some protein, but it's mostly fat. Go to the next one. All right, potato chips. How many grams or how many servings do you log? Now everyone's like scared to give an answer. Three servings. So if you were going to go to fitness pal, you could log 2 or 3 servings. Is that actually what you dish yourself out? That's probably about a serving, or would you maybe even give yourself more? I mean, when you like if you think you're gonna eat a hot dog and some potato chips, is that an accurate representation of 1 serving to you?
Yes.
Nobody wants to be on that one. Nobody wants to be on it. All right, so that's 35 grams. That's about 1 serving. 188 calories. From that, 112 are fat. It's got 2 grams of protein and 18 carbs. So almost purely fat. And that's another reason to look at your nutrition label, because you might look at potato chips and think, oh, it's a potato. It's a lot of carbs. It's mostly fat. That's probably not even a full bowl for most of you guys. Like when we pour our bowl of cereal, we're talking about stuff, all right? How many servings?
1, 2. Oh, that's
3 servings. 1.
I think it's
One out numbers. Okay, well, my next I believe that was like 2.5 servings. So if you think about what 1 serving is of cereal,
not enough.
it's about half that, and you're definitely going more than that in your bowl. So,
Yeah.
it's not saying, it's the last slide is what you need. Okay, go ahead. I'm on the peanut butter. I'm out for all. I know a lot about peanut butter.
Do you eat peanut butter?
I do. It's not a protein source.
Yeah.
And it's also something that's super calorie dense, so I wanted to really drive that point home for you guys. If you're putting peanut butter, let's say on a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or whatever you guys use peanut butter for, which spoon is probably gonna need to cover that bread? Not 1 serving. So if you're logging and you're eyeballing your food portion, or you're just going off the food label, you're like, oh, I'm gonna go to my fitness pal, I'm gonna log this Jif peanut butter, I'm gonna put 1 serving down there, and then I'm still gonna just give myself what my thought of 1 serving is without actually weighing it. You're gonna end up with way more calories than what you actually consume. So for most people, enough peanut butter to cover their entire bread, maybe a PB&J, is gonna be more than that 2 tablespoons. You're probably gonna end up with 3, 3.5, 4 maybe, and that's already over 100 calories more than what the actual serving is.
Wait, so number 2 is like 2 servings? That's actually 2 tablespoons?
That's 2 tablespoons, 1 serving.
Holy mother of pearl. I'll do like, oh wow.
So if you're sitting there munching on an apple and peanut butter sandwich, you can get a healthy snack. You can easily consume more than that 3 tablespoons as using peanut butter as a dip, and you've just consumed like 500 or 600 calories just dipping your apple in some peanut butter. Yes. So I did like PB Fit, except that it's kind of runny. My hack is using 50-50 PB Fit or PB2, like the peanut butter powder, with the same amount of actual peanut butter. So you can mix like a tablespoon of PB2, which is almost purely protein. It's got a couple carbs in it, with a tablespoon of peanut butter. So you still get that texture, and you're still going to get some fat from it, but your spread of how much you actually get, your volume from it, is going to be a lot higher. You're going to double your volume without doubling your calories. So. All right, moving on. Okay, so we're going to talk about calorie expenditure, because that's really what it all boils down to. If you are trying to lose weight, or even if you're trying to gain weight, to understand where your calorie expenditure is coming from, this is something you need to know. So a lot of us really try to outwork our core diets. I don't know if you guys can really So that's things like your daily tasks, your fidgeting, your walking around, getting up to put your coffee cup in the sink. That's just the little things that you do throughout the day that make you move, but it's not exercise. The next one is the thermic effective food. So certain foods will burn more calories just by digesting it than others. So that's why food quality comes into play when you're dieting, and if you're only eating junk food, then you're not gonna get as many calories to work with as if you were eating mostly whole foods. So protein has a higher thermic effective food than the other macronutrients. Another reason why getting enough protein is important is one, you're gonna feel more satiated with it, so you have that feeling of fullness on less food. And two, because you're actually gonna burn more calories by digesting protein and breaking it down. The last one is exercise activity. It only makes up 5 to 10% of your calories burned for the day. So a lot of people are going off of their watches. I don't know, for whatever reason, everyone is obsessed over that number on the watch. Everyone's like, nope, can't start the timer until I start my watch because it doesn't count. Your watches are probably super inaccurate. I currently wear 3 different calorie trackers or exercise trackers. None of them are actually super accurate, but I know that they all overshoot how many calories you're actually burning. Most people burn, even in like high intensity workout like what we do, 20 minutes, you might burn anywhere between 100 and 300 calories. Somebody who's bigger might burn a little bit more than that, but really like 100 to 300 calories a day, you're not gonna outwork much of your food doing that. It's super beneficial for your health, don't get me wrong, everyone should be exercising for longevity, for health, but it's not good as a weight loss strategy. It'll contribute, but it's not gonna do it for you alone. It really has to come down to your diet. So if you want to increase your caloric expenditure, so my strategy is always diet on the most food that I possibly can, because why would I want to cut out more food? We all love food, so if I can do some things that are easy to increase my caloric expenditure, I get to increase my food volume too. So like I said, most workouts are only going to burn 100 to 300 calories, so doing extra workouts when you're already doing one a day is probably not the answer. Increasing your movement, however, can increase a lot of your caloric expenditure. So just getting more steps in, that's why the steps thing is such an important piece to, not just health, but the weight loss puzzle, because your steps really add up to way more than what your exercise is going to be. So everyone really should, for health benefits, should be getting at least 7,000 steps a day. But if you want to diet on more food, get 10,000, 11,000 steps a day. Go on an extra walk. Walk right after your meal. It's going to help with insulin sensitivity and help you be able to lose weight while you're still getting enough food. Basically, at the end of the day, it comes down to more movement, more food. So little things like if you do work a sedentary job, unfortunately, most of us do, and it's not something that we can control, and so getting enough steps in is hard. But things like when you're sitting there and you've got a dirty coffee cup sitting next to your desk and you're thinking, I'm just gonna put this back when I go on my lunch break, get up and put the coffee cup away. Like, take the extra few seconds, it's a little bit of extra movement. When you need to print things at work, get up every time you print something, grab a piece of paper from the printer, don't just wait for them to pile up. There's little things that you can do that add to your caloric expenditure. I wanted to talk about water intake because this is also really important, especially for, not just for health, but for weight loss. It's really underrated when it comes to weight loss, getting enough water in. It's not only beneficial for your performance in the gym, so if you're feeling really sluggish, or if you have brain fog, or just feeling like you don't have a lot of energy, a lot of times that isn't like you need more caffeine, it's you need more water. Temperature regulation, so if you're somebody who overheats easily when you work out, probably dehydrated. You need enough water for your electrolyte balance, so if you're not getting proper hydration, you're not going to be able to hang on to those electrolytes. Your recovery, so if you suffer from muscle cramps or you get a lot of side stitches, a lot of soreness, that, obviously that can be a lot of things, but water is definitely going to help with that. Mental focus and clarity, that's a really underrated one. So a lot of people who say, I deal with brain fog, or I'm really sluggish, I'm really tired all day, they just want to caffeinate. It really comes down to you're probably very dehydrated. Your water, achievable if you're not drinking even the minimum amount of water. Work your way up to 50 ounces, and once you get good and comfortable with that, work your way up to 60 ounces. Start building on that. Don't just go straight for that high number that's really unachievable for you because that's not part of your lifestyle, and build from there. I did want to talk about sugars and artificial sweeteners today because I feel like that's kind of a hot topic too. I get asked about that a lot. Like, there's a lot of misinformation online about these things, and I've even had people tell me when I'm trying to tell them about sugars and artificial sweeteners, like, oh, I can't do that because my gut, like they're bad for your gut or something like that. So I kind of want to break down what the difference between the two are. Refined sugar is a processed carbohydrate that only provides calories and no nutrients. There's nothing nutritionally beneficial from cane sugar. And that's what, unfortunately, a lot of us get in our diet. So enjoy it, but enjoy sparingly. Don't cut it out completely from your diet. That's not sustainable for most of us. But watch the amount of added refined sugar that you're getting in your diet. Artificial sweeteners. So this is one that can affect gut health. If you are somebody who is sensitive to certain chemicals, or if you just like, if you notice when you eat artificial sweeteners, or certain things that like say that there's zero sugar, that might be an artificial sweetener. If your stomach is upset or you have some kind of symptom after you eat it. They don't cause an insulin response, so they're fantastic for people who are trying to diet but suffer from a sweet tooth. Overall, unless you have a gut issue, they're really not harmful to you. That doesn't mean you should get a ton of them in your diet. So like aspartame is a big one that everyone's like, oh, that's horrible for you. If you look at the studies, it doesn't show that there's really any difference between those sweeteners and alternatives as far as metabolic health goes. And they prove to be really beneficial for people who need to diet and still want to get sweets in. So don't steer clear from the diet soda. If that's going to help satisfy your sweet tooth and help you stay on track and not make you give up and then just want to drink regular soda, then go for it. Lexi?
Yeah. So like the sucralose that's in the energy drinks, is that similar to the aspartame that you're talking about?
Yeah.
It is the same.
It's an artificial sweetener. So that's the other topic that I want to get into. So natural sweeteners are sweeteners made from food sources. So those are things that are naturally found in our fruits and other food sources. So there is a difference between artificial sweeteners and natural sweeteners. Natural sweeteners you're not going to have gut issues from unless you have some kind of specific what's the word I'm thinking of? It's not sensitivity. Like I don't know, pregnancy brain fog. Allergy. Unless you have a specific allergy to a specific ingredient, you're not gonna have problems from natural sweeteners. So there's been times that I've told people like, well, what do I sweeten my food with if I'm trying to avoid sugar, and I'll say something like monk fruit, and they'll be like, well, that's bad for you, or like that's an artificial sweetener. I shouldn't have that. That's not true. Monk fruit is my personal favorite, sweetener alternative or sugar alternative because I think it tastes most like sugar. Some of them kind of have a weird aftertaste. Find the one that works for you and stick with it. But monk fruit's my favorite. They're 0 calories, so they're not going to affect your insulin. They're not going to affect your blood glucose, which is eventually what is going to cause you to gain fat. So these are things that you should enjoy often in your diet, especially if you have a sweet tooth. So artificial sweeteners, they're fine. Go for the diet soda if that keeps you from drinking regular soda. It's going to be 120 calories. If you can get natural sweeteners, especially if you're doing your own baking, that's the preference there. And also just know that there are natural sweeteners that aren't 0 calories. So date syrup, honey, things like that. Those do have calories in it, so it is something you still need to check the nutritional label for. But for the most part, when you see like a natural sweetener as your sweetener alternative, it'll like the monk fruit, those are going to be 0 calories. Stevia is another one. It kind of has a weird aftertaste. I feel like it's fine. We're gonna talk about fad diets. I ruffled some feathers by talking about this the other day, or just fads in general, because we're in that time of year that everyone's jumping on some kind of fad train because they want to tackle that New Year goal and they're going to go to some extreme to get it. The fried foods, like all the things. And my lifestyle changed with just cleaning up some ingredients. Like I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just swapping ingredients out for like more organic options, sugar-free options. From there, I got into a fitness program that was kind of like HIIT style. That got me into CrossFit eventually. So mine was kind of like a natural progression of sustainable changes. I never did that like, oh, I'm gonna lose 20 pounds, I'm gonna lose it this month, and I'm gonna do 75 hard or whatever it is. So while those things can have their benefits, all of those fads have a benefit for a reason. They're not sustainable for most people, so it's just something to be mindful of if you're gonna hop on that train. Some of them can have disadvantages for your health too. Carnivore is the one I keep getting asked about lately because there's this social media explosion about carnivore diet. Does have some health benefits, obviously makes it very easy to get protein in. It also makes it very easy to be in a caloric deficit because the only thing that you can eat is meat and you can only eat so much of that a day and you're bored of it. But what it does also completely eliminate is all of your micronutrients in your diet. So the vegetables, fruits, probiotics, things like that you're gonna get from natural food sources that are super beneficial for your health. You're gonna completely eliminate that from your diet, which is not beneficial. And again, carnivore is not very sustainable for most people. Most of us are not gonna be satisfied eating only meat all day, every day. If you are somebody who has a very severe gut issue, it's a great elimination diet strategy. So sometimes you'll go to the doctor and they'll be like, well, there's something that you're sensitive to, but we don't know what it is, so we need to do an elimination diet. And they give you a list of all these foods that you can't eat, and then you slowly incorporate those back in. If that's you, if you have a really bad gut issue, carnivore can be super beneficial for that because you're naturally eliminating everything but meat from your diet. But again, as a weight loss strategy, not going to be sustainable. Other examples, Whole30, keto, the zone diet, sugar-free, paleo, all of those things are things that most people are going to stick with for 2 weeks or less. They give up on it, and then you've completely given up on that goal. The second, it's because with those things are all or nothing. So the second you go wrong, 75 hard, I'm going to call that one out as an example because there are so many things that you can mess up in that program. The day that you forget to read your 10 pages, or the day that you miss an outdoor workout, you've completely derailed the whole program and you have to completely start over according to their program guide. Most people aren't going to start over. They're just going to give up. They're going to go back to their regular lifestyle because they weren't trying to make sustainable changes that they could realize, like, okay, if it changes that I'm trying to make right now with my diet or getting enough protein and getting my vegetables in, but one day I don't get enough protein, I'm not just going to walk away from that. I'm going to be like, okay, the next day I'm going to try to get my protein in. So it's not an all or nothing thing. I'm a huge advocate for like an 80-20 lifestyle. So 80% of your food being whole food sources, produce, clean ingredients, 20% of those things being the refined sugars and the prepackaged crap and dining out and things like that. So dining out probably no more than 2 times a week. Most of your food's being cooked at home, using home ingredients, not eating a lot of stuff from packages. Really can make a huge difference in your lifestyle, and then you still get some of those things that you think that you have to give up, like dining out, sugars or real soda or ice cream, whatever that is, whatever that advice is for you. Okay. There's a lot of talking. We're good, wondering when we were gonna get to the end.
She said I'm sorry.
All right, so I'm going to open it for Q&A because I know that this was just kind of a broad thing. A lot of you guys probably have specific questions on like, okay, now I want to make some changes, like what do I do, or something lingering. So we'll start with Becca.
So gummies, stay away from them no matter what the supplement.
Some I do. I would avoid them for multivitamin just because there's so many vitamins in that you're going to miss out on or get small quantities of. If it means that you're not going to take that vitamin at all, then go for the gummy. But like I do D3 and K2 in a gummy form just because it's like my treat for the day. I know that sounds weird, but a multivitamin I would stay away from. I would do a pill form. Anything that comes in a liquid form is going to be probably the most absorbable version of it, but pill, powder, or liquid are all fine. Okay.
So may come to you about that, you know, how something.
Are you saying, like, are you aware of vitamins that you're taking that counter each other, or you're asking if there are certain
I know
vitamins?
there are, excuse me, I know that there are, well, but I just don't know always necessarily when I'm taking them at certain times of day, if I just don't want anything to be like, you know.
Most of them are fine to take all at the same time, with the exception of if you take certain medications.
Okay.
And in that case, most people just need to do the medications in the morning and vitamins in the evening, or vice versa.
Calcium and iron do not talk to each other well. You have to take calcium and iron separate from each other.
At different times of day, or
Yeah.
at least, excuse me,
At least like 2 to 3 hours apart.
Meal, a certain meal and carbs.
So we can't see.
Yeah, the majority of them, like, especially in a multivitamin, the ones that they are gonna throw in there together are gonna be fine to take together, but it really depends on what your supplement list is, and it's always good to write all these out and check.
On Central Pump, 'cause I take a shitload of supplements, I always have, but you're saying magnesium, but you know how many different magnesiums there are out there?
Okay,
which
so
ones
there's
are you
13 forms of magnesium, they all have different benefits. They're all beneficial for you, but the most bioavailable, the most absorbable, and the most universal version is magnesium glycinate. Am I saying that correct? Hang on. Bisglycinate is, I think, is how it's pronounced. I think they call it glycinate on the nutrition label, but it's actually like, I think THIS, bisglycinate is what it's called. If you are somebody who struggles with sleep and you're taking magnesium specifically for that, magnesium L-threonate is what you wanna look for. The one to avoid is magnesium oxide. It's basically a laxative, unless you have digestive issues, then take this magnesium oxide. So don't buy just magnesium oxide. This glycinate, or usually on a nutrition label, I think they usually just call it glycinate.
you know, like there's different like oils, like magnesium oils, rubs and things like that. Do you think those are just as effective? Well, it's depending on.
I mean, depending on the supplement, but magnesium is one that can absorb through skin, so if you would rather not consume something, they say to put magnesium oil on like the bottoms of your feet or your armpits, or your chest, like an area of your skin that's thinner and more sensitive to that. Questions? Just Becca today?
Which supplement did you say was best for muscle soreness? Is that creatine? Or
Well, both, because magnesium can affect that, your hydration can affect that. Creatine, making sure that you get enough protein. There's actually a lot of supplements that you take for muscle soreness. Glutamine. Yes. Oh.
beneficial for people?
Hang on, I'm gonna answer
No,
questions.
you're fine, you started. You started, go ahead.
What were you saying? Heidi.
Yes, okay, so proteins and gas, let's just throw it out there. So like, when you are adding the protein powders and stuff, you've got, hey, this is great, cause it's all plant protein, this is great, cause it's all whey. Which one's worse for the gut?
Worse for the gut.
Yeah,
Some people
Or
can be a
percent.
little bit more sensitive to whey protein or like anything that comes from milk. And if that's the case, usually it's just a matter of you need to slowly increase your protein intake. It's not that you need to avoid it altogether. It's just that your gut isn't used to it, and when you add in a ton of it at once, like especially with a protein shake, you need to slowly incorporate it. So if you need, let's say your protein goal is 150, but right now you're only getting 60 a day, which most people probably are. It's probably a lot lower than what you would think. Slowly working that up to get your gut used to it. But if you notice that you're super sensitive to a certain type of protein, like whey protein, you can go for pea protein. It's just not as the protein synthesis that happens from plant-based protein isn't the same as animal-based protein. So you're gonna get more protein synthesis from animal-based protein than you are plant protein. So it's a little bit more beneficial, but if it just doesn't sit well with you, either's fine. Okay, what were you saying?
Isn't there a way for you to look at the nutrition label and be able to tell if it's considered high protein? Like, a lot of foods will have on the label, say this is a protein food or whatever, but it's actually not, because it has.
Yeah, so peanut butter is one of them. I think one. I'm sorry, I hate peanut butter and the fat. I actually love peanut butter. I just hate that they consider it protein. I'm pretty sure if you look at a peanut butter protein or a tub of peanut butter, on the front it'll say great source of
Yeah,
protein.
that's what I mean.
Or like your cereals, it'll say great source of calcium or something like that. And try to advertise it as a health item. It's just a marketing trap that they're trying to catch you in, and that's why it's important to be able to understand nutrition labels and how to read them, because you can look at that and be like, "Yeah, maybe it does have a little bit of calcium in it, but everything else in this is garbage." Or maybe it says great source of protein, but it's only got 7 grams of protein and 16 grams of fat. Doing the math on it is how you would know your protein to fat ratio. Nick?
Can you do that on the whiteboard to show some people, like, make an example of that real quick and break it down, calories to overall the macros? Does that make sense?
Like, if it's 240 calories and 20 grams of protein, is that still high protein?
Can I see your phone? That's kind of what we did with that one, like, what do we wanna look at?
Peanut butter. Nuts. Do you like a unsalted nut?
Nuts? Source.
Do like a protein that also has some carbs and stuff, and also like a chicken strip.
Chicken strip? Like prepackaged chicken strip?
Like a chicken patty. Do a chicken patty.
Okay. We'll do a Tyson chicken patty, like what you buy from Walmart in the chicken section. So, we'll pull up a chicken patty. Okay, so on this they'll probably say, okay, so this is one, you guys aren't gonna be able to see this, but on the front of this package, it says 10 grams of protein per serving. You're like, oh great, it's got protein in it. And then you look at the nutrition label. 200 calories per patty. Total fat, 13 grams. Carbs. Don't mind my mess. Carbs, 10 grams. And then protein, great source of protein, it says 10 grams. So you got the same amount of carbs and protein, even though on the front of the package it says great source of protein. It's also the same source of carbs, so you've got 40 calories of each of those. Can anyone do 13 times 9 off the top of their head? I'll do it off the top of my head. 117. Okay, so that's a Tyson chicken patty right there. A great example of it, because a lot of those types of foods will say something like great source of protein, or it'll tell you how much protein is in it, say 10 grams of protein per serving, and then you look at the nutrition label and you're thinking, oh, it's gonna give you my protein for the day, but it's actually really gonna give you way more fat calories than it's gonna give you protein. And also, why is it saying great source of protein, but it's not saying great source of carbs? They're the same.
A lot of times I saw this thing, it says that if it says it's a great source of protein, you take the calories, so it's 200, and the decimal point would be at the end. You move it over to the left one. So if it's actually a good source of protein, it would have at least 20 grams of protein.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I do too.
Yeah.
Cause it'll say, high protein snack bar or
Mhm.
whatever. If you just cover that last digit of the
snacks, I try to get out at least 20 grams of protein per snack. So, one of the questions I actually had earlier this week was, why did I just draw a blank? This pregnancy brain is, it's a real thing. Oh, like what if I eat the bagel in the morning and I have a lot of carbs with that? My bagel is my non-negotiable. I encourage everyone to have a non-negotiable in their diet. So that's something that you do every day that's maybe not working towards that goal that you have, whether that's fat loss, muscle growth, whatever, like that treat that you have every day that you're like, I'm not gonna give this up because this makes me happy. You should have that every day. So mine is a bagel in the morning. It's not a source of protein. It's a source of carbs. My bagel has like 53 grams of carbs and like 9 grams of protein, which isn't horrible, but that's a lot of carbs. If you are somebody who is really serious about that goal, and especially when it comes to starting your day feeling full, starting your day with a bunch of sugar or carbs is not going to make you feel full for very long, and then you're going to be hungry again later on in the day. So one way to combat that is to pair it with a protein source, and maybe even a little bit of fat. That's why eggs are a good breakfast. Not that you should have like 5 or 6 eggs. That's a lot of fat, but it gives you just a little bit more of something that's satiating. Carbs are not going to be very satiating. Protein is, and fat is, but it's, like I said, it's calorie dense. So pairing it with something that's going to make you feel a little bit more full. So, you know, if I was like going to get serious about my goal, maybe I would still eat right now I'm pregnant, I really don't care, but if I was in a weight loss phase, maybe I would pair it with also a cup of yogurt, Greek yogurt, so that I can get some protein out of that meal, and I'm still getting that thing that makes me happy.
What is that for an egg, do you know? Is eggs are more fat or more protein?
Egg is about 50-50. I think one egg has, is it 4 grams, 5 grams of fat, and about 4 or 5 grams of protein. So, eggs are really good for you, don't get me wrong, like I hate that eggs are demonized, but if you're somebody who's in a calorie deficit, eating 5 or 6 eggs for breakfast is gonna give you a lot of calories, and most of your fat is already used up for the day. So what I'll do is do like 1 egg, and I'll make that with some egg beaters or with some egg whites, so that I can still get a little bit of that flavor from the yolk, still have it kind of balanced out, so that I'm not eating just pure protein, and then having more volume to go with it from the egg beaters and the egg whites.
So you're not opposed to like the packaged egg whites like from the store? Just add it.
I don't think that everything that you should be eating should come from a package. And the more things that you can get in your diet that don't even have a nutrition label on it, the better for you they're going to be. But we also live in a world where we have to go by convenience. Like telling somebody who works a busy 12-hour schedule and raises kids and has other things going on in life that they need to home cook every meal, they need to meal prep all of their meals. It's unrealistic, it's unsustainable, so it's just like that fad diet. You're not setting yourself up for success if you set this standard that's going to be too high for you to ever achieve. If you're somebody with a super busy schedule and that means that you have to buy prepackaged stuff, yeah, maybe watch some of the ingredient labels and try to pick some cleaner options. There's plenty of companies out there that make things with clean ingredients.
Not Tyson. No, I'm just kidding.
They probably don't. I'm just going to say that. That you can find that compromise between that convenience piece and still work towards your health and nutrition goals.
So, do you recommend, so I drink Fairlife protein shakes, so do you recommend, that's a good way for me to get like 30 grams of protein?
Yeah.
Do you recommend a balance, because gosh, if I did I would be eating a lot of protein if I did the whole calorie, or gram per pound that I weigh. Anyway, you say only this many in like protein shakes and this many in definite like meat.
Not necessarily
eggs.
if it helps you reach your protein goal. Like I've got clients that seriously will not touch a piece of meat. They're just like, I'm not gonna do it. Would I like them to eat more meat? Yeah, I think it would be very beneficial for their health. But if it comes down to I'm gonna eat all this packaged crap or drink protein shakes, I would much rather see them drink the protein shake and still get their protein in. Because it's still, I mean, when it comes down to it breaking down in your body and providing you the same benefits for muscle preservation and hormone balance and things like that, protein right after a workout. Protein takes a while to digest anyway. There are some more like, some proteins are quicker to synthesize, but that also means that you're consuming those extra calories and not really feeling full out of it, so you have to weigh that out too. At the end of the day, if you like look at studies, it's such a marginal amount that it makes a difference that it's not even worth timing. Yes.
So when you're increasing your protein and maybe you're adding in creatine, and if you're not meeting your recommended daily value water intake, would you recommend not increasing unless your water intake is up on things like that? So
Creatine?
creatine and protein.
Protein, honestly, protein shakes are a good way to keep up with hydration. You're mixing it with water or like almond milk or something, that's a fluid that counts. Creatine, it's a myth that creatine dehydrates you. Some people might be a little bit more sensitive to creatine, but that just means that they need to split it. Like if you're taking 5 grams a day, maybe take 2.5 in the morning and 2.5 in the evening. There's really no negative effects, no, from creatine. The rest is all personal testimony, people who are just, they already have it in their heads that creatine's bad for them.
That was
You might see a little bit of initial weight gain just because of water retention, but,
because that was even taught to us. Of course, this has been a day since I went to undergrad, but it was taught to us that if you start taking creatine, you need to increase your water by about 15%, or it will dehydrate you. So
yeah, that one's been debunked, so.
okay, good.
It's false.
That's good. Good.
Do you weigh the food before or after you cook it?
Raw weight is always preferred, but if you do, weigh your food, if you weigh your food after it's been cooked, just make sure it's logged as cooked. So if I'm gonna log chicken breast, my preference is to weigh it before I cook it and get that raw weight. So 8 ounces of chicken breast raw, I'm gonna log 8 ounces of raw chicken breast. But if, let's say I didn't get a chance to, or somebody else cooked it, or whatever, I'm gonna weigh it cooked. I'm just gonna make sure I'm gonna pick an entry in my MyFitnessPal, whatever that app is that I'm gonna use to log, and pick a cook entry, because it's probably gonna be closer to like 5 ounces cooked.
Do you have 3 or 4 items that come to mind for the thermogenic?
For increasing thermogenesis, so protein, any source of protein is gonna be one, and anything high in fiber, so like your berries, raspberries especially, blueberries, anything high fiber. Those are gonna be the 2 main ones that they take longer to break down, so they're gonna take more energy to digest. Yep.
There's all those supplements, I don't take them, but that increase thermogenesis with this supplement. Those like a waste.
Typically not. If anything, they just make you hotter, and so you're gonna burn a little bit more calories from being hot. But I would steer clear of any supplement that claims to just make you lose weight. It's probably just a gimmicky. Yeah. What's gonna make you lose weight is reducing your caloric intake and increasing activity. There's really not a supplement that's gonna make you do that. There's some medications that will make you perceive hunger differently, but that's not a healthy way of going about it. It's not gonna teach you what the foundation of your nutrition should look like just by restricting your hunger. So learning how to actually approach that and make some sustainable changes is gonna be more beneficial for your health. Any other? Is anyone like got fat loss goals going on this year? Health goals?
What's your take on cottage cheese?
It's great. Cottage cheese. I don't know if you TikTok, you probably don't, but there's all kinds of things on TikTok where you can use cottage cheese for like things that you would not even expect. Brownies. Pat was sending me some that were real bizarre. Some of them are pretty good. Like I've mixed cottage cheese in like my eggs, egg beaters. Yeah, I don't notice any difference. ranch, the powdered ranch seasoning, or like Fiesta ranch, or French onion to blended cottage cheese. Basically just makes your dip a protein source, and it makes it easier for you to get your veggies in, because then you can use it as a veggie dip.
What about adding those seasonings to non-fat, plain regular?
Yeah, same, it's an alternative. When you're trying to, and that's another thing, just seasonings in general was a question that I had. When you're trying to look at your nutrition plan for the week, I try to steer clear of the healthy recipe funnel that you could go down, because people will be like, oh, I'm gonna get on this health kick and I'm gonna Google these healthy recipes. A lot of times if you Google a healthy recipe, it's like what I was saying earlier, it's gonna have like avocado and certain oils and chia seeds and all this other filler stuff in it that, like, maybe those things provide some health benefits, but they're not gonna provide a caloric deficit. They're not gonna get you the most bang for your buck when it comes to food volume. So I try to steer clear of the healthy recipe vortex that you could go down. Try to stick with like main food groups. So like keeping your meals simple. I'm a big food prep advocate versus meal prep advocate. I don't think that it's easy for most people to sit there and prep various meals that they're gonna divide into containers and eat throughout the week. Prepping your food, especially for most of us who are busy, is a lot easier. So prepping your protein source, whether that's chicken and just leaving it plain, or some ground meat, leaving it plain, and adding in seasonings as you grab those for your lunch, making sure you're using barbecue sauces, seasonings, using different ones throughout the week so you have food variety, because a lot of people get bored of the same thing all the time, and like just using different sides with that too. So bulk prep some lean ground beef, bulk prep some roasted veggies, some rice, and then as you go throughout the week, based on what your food preference is that day or what you're feeling that day, you can just grab some of those staples, add in the seasonings and the barbecue sauces and things like that, and you have some food variety with that too.
What about how we're preparing our foods? Like, is it air frying healthier than obviously deep
Frying.
Or if you're wanting to make chicken in a skillet, is it better to use olive oil over like vanilla?
I am gonna get on that seed oil train. I think seed oils are really bad for you. If you can use like extra virgin olive oil, use that. But
But
also
let's
know
not
that you
say-
need to log that. Like that's adding calories to that meal. So use a tablespoon of olive oil to fry your eggs in the morning, where you could use maybe like a spray that's gonna add minuscule amounts of calories. Your nonstick spray is gonna be olive oil spray. It's gonna be better than dumping that tablespoon in your frying pan.
So do you think the spray works just as good?
Oh, it does. For a non-stick purpose, yeah. The olive oil might add more flavor to whatever you're cooking. That's why people like to cook with it. But you have to account for those calories. 1 tablespoon of olive oil is 120 calories. So if you're cooking every meal with a tablespoon or 2 of oil, you're adding a lot of calories, and you're not even noticing that. Like that's not gonna make you feel fuller. You're getting hundreds of extra calories in your diet from something that's almost invisible to you. So it's just something you have to account for.
Does the chicken turn out the same if you make it in olive oil versus other oils? Like what?
I mean, it's gonna be like more moist probably, but I've never cooked with olive oil. Always cooked with like non-stick spray. And it works fine for me.
I just can't give up my cashew chicken, and I gotta make that chicken skillet.
That's, I'll call you out on that, because that's an example of like somebody going down that healthy recipe rabbit
I
hole.
never claimed it was healthy.
She sent me a message and she said, is this healthy? Well, I mean, nutritionally, what does it provide you? It provides you quite a few fats, some protein, and I think it did have some carbs because you had rice or something in it. But I'm like, it's not really a question of is this healthy? For most people, like, yeah, if you have a health goal in mind, you already are pretty squared away with your diet and you're trying to take it to that next level, then looking at specific ingredients and chemicals that are in those things, it's it's a great path to go down, but it's not what most people need to jump into when they're trying to make some lifestyle changes to lose weight or get a little bit healthier. For the most part, you just need to pay attention to what your protein, carbs, and fats are in your overall caloric intake. So for that one, you know, you might have Googled a healthy recipe, and it turned out to be great, like it was a delicious recipe, but it was calorically dense. So is it healthy? Probably, but is it gonna help you with your calorie deficit? Not as much as maybe some alternatives that are a little bit lower in fat or have other ingredients that are gonna give you more food volume.
Well, and maybe that's your happy meal, your one thing where you're just not gonna
You're
budge.
non-negotiable.
Oh, yeah, I'm not
giving up.
I call it happy meal. It's funner to say happy
It's,
meal.
and there's nothing wrong with that. You should have some things in your diet that you're like, maybe this isn't necessarily like the best option for me to reach my fat loss goal, but if it keeps me hanging on, then do that. Just don't do it in really high volumes. Make some changes here and there and build on those until you, like, sugar is a great example. Like a lot of people have a really hard time cutting sugar from their diet, and they try to cut all their sugar at once, and then they're dealing with cravings, and the cravings become overwhelming until they get to the point that they can no longer handle it, and then they're pounding a whole case of Oreos or whatever it is, and then they've given up on their diet and they've completely derailed, and then they think that, well, it's ruined, I'm done with this diet. So having maybe an Oreo here and there to keep your cravings at bay in smaller doses is what's gonna keep you on track for the long run, then do that. Just try to moderate that amount. And if you can't just do 1 or 2 a day right now, you know, figure out what that is, what that baseline is for you, try to reduce it and keep building from there. Like for some people it's gonna be a longer journey than others. Like some people have no problems walking away from those things and not eating them anymore. But other people are gonna deal with cravings, and they're gonna have like those food addictions and those things that they can't get past. It's gonna take them a little bit longer to shake those things out of their day-to-day life. But if you're still working towards that, you're still trying to reduce even a little bit at a time, that's ultimately gonna get you where you need to go over trying something extreme like eliminating them altogether, only sticking with it for 2 weeks and then giving up. Anything else?
Make sure if you guys need, I know in the beginning she was talking about that equation, how many calories, your expenditure and stuff is. Make sure if you guys have questions on that, if you don't know how to do it on your own, she obviously does that for everyone for free. She'll help you out, she'll give you those numbers. Obviously you guys know where you should be with your protein, somewhere around your, whatever your lean body weight is or whatever. From there you can play with the carbs and fats. But if you have questions, ask her. She's obviously a good resource. You can get a lot of misinformation, and if you go home now and you put in Google, you know, what should my calories be if I want to lose 10 pounds this month, it could be way off. So reach out there, she can give you those numbers, and you can start working on be cautious of what your doctor is telling you. If you're asking your doctor, hey, I'm overweight, what should I be eating, what should I do? Please ask him. You can ask your doctor, come to us with whatever he told you, and we'll probably debunk most of what he said. Your doctors do not know anything about nutrition. I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole, but at least if you wanna get their advice, that's fine, but come to us and let us talk to you about what he said and why it's probably wrong.